Part 2 of mini award-winning gutter. It's been winning all the awards for the mini gutters or mini transfer show category. It's cleaning up. I've heard already they're getting the awards ready, putting the ribbons around the trophy. But anyway, I'm back with Neil. I'm back with John, and boy, have things moved on. Boy, have they moved on since we were with you. When were we with you? 3 hours ago, I think, roughly. Depends when this is going out. John. Well, this morning we were busy going to metaphorical town for Ben Davies. Now Ozan Kabak seems to be the real deal. Paul Joyce, breaking in the last, well, as we're recording, in the last few mins, that Liverpool are likely, I think, to take Kabak on loan with an option, not an obligation, an option, John, to buy him permanently. The deal seems to hinge on Mustafi going to Schalke from Arsenal. That guy, we knew he'd have a part to play in the saga, didn't we?
You can't keep him out the action.
Between him and Celtic, they've been the best supporting cast. Maybe he'll end up there. Who knows? There was a question there somewhere, John. Just answer whatever you like.
Yeah, Kabak looks the most likely now, and it's crazy, isn't it? Because obviously, earlier in the year, it's paper talk and things, and but the talk was Kabak commanded a fairly decent fee, and then now it looks like they're quite happy to send him to Liverpool on loan and just with an option rather than obligation. It looks like Liverpool have fought the corner on the obligation and seem to be winning. And so,
quite a vote of confidence, isn't it? We do not want to be obliged to buy you.
Well, it is, but I think it's wise, isn't it? Because it just allows us a few months just to sort of see where we are. We know the market's going to be different in the summer, both in terms of availability, but also, just having a little bit more time and Liverpool knowing a bit more where they are. And so I think it certainly makes sense from a Liverpool point of view, and gladly seems to make sense from a Schalke point of view as well. So it might be one that drags out a little bit just because there is the Mustafi angle and he is trying to get him in, but it does look the most likely at the moment. And what pleases me is that he's a long-term, one that Liverpool have been looking at, really. So it's they haven't necessarily been working on it for as long as what we'd like, but certainly they've been looking at him for a long time. So they do like him, and it looks like it's going to happen.
Yeah, Neil, I mean, that is an interesting and important point for us not to forget. Kabak is, you can't file him under the panic buy category quite the way we might do with the Ben Davies one, simply because we know Liverpool was strongly interested in him last summer. I did many shows where his name came up. At 20/21, you can understand why Liverpool were prepared to be patient. Perhaps this has been brought forward because of the situation. Although we banged on the last mini gutter about how, but he's been playing in a shit team who ship goals. At the end of the day, he must have some potential, if truth be told, for him to, be potentially commanding the fee he is, and given his age and Liverpool's sustained interest in him.
I think there's a few little bits and pieces. The one is the sustained interest part, and the same goes to an extent for Davies, to be honest with you. I think Liverpool know a lot about a lot of footballers. So if there's a point where Liverpool decide that they're going to go in for one, it's not, they haven't just pulled Davies out of the hat. They might have learned that he was available, and they might have learned a thing or two about him, but they've not done that from absolutely nowhere. And I think that that's worth sort of bearing in mind. With Kabak, I think that they'll have obviously had their eye on him. Is it ideal? Is it what they'd want to do? The question on all this is, are Liverpool doing it if Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez are both looking absolutely fantastic at the heart of Liverpool's defence? No, they might be thinking about doing one if Matip had been, serially inconsistent and unavailable. But I think that all of these players, and I think that one of the things that there's something really good about what Nat Phillips does yesterday for West Ham and what he does for that half against Tottenham is he just sort of takes the pressure off a little bit. Not just the idea of, well, Nat Phillips can play. What I mean is it's a real reminder that all the football players are at least quite good. And if you can build a little side around and you can mitigate weaknesses, ensure players can show strength, etc., then you can get a tune out of a lot of players in this Liverpool side. And I think, don't get me wrong, I don't want to see Phillips starting a Champions League semi-final or anything like that. But it is a little just a reminder that, a lot of this is going to come down to coaching, the attitude of that player when they're thrown in. I think that that's also maybe one of the reasons why with Kabak, Liverpool aren't looking for an obligation. It might not be around talent. It might be that there's a couple of questions around his mentality and his outlook. So they're thinking, well, it becomes a trial. We can have a little look at him and go from there. There might be other sort of things that are sort of ongoing, that it's not as cut and dried. But I think there's a few interesting things, Rob, and I've got some stats for them, which people who are watching this as a video, which will come out a little bit later, will be able to see, but we can talk through. And would you like me to share them with you, Roberto?
Share away. This is the starfish of knowledge, isn't it? Stats.
It is indeed. It is indeed. It's just the first one's just his radar, and I think it's quite interesting. Again, the thing on centre halves is that me to say that a lot of the things that you see from central defensive performance says enough about what the team's doing and what they're asking of the centre half, as much as necessarily the ability of the centre half in question. But I think within this one from last season at Schalke, you can see he's busy enough in terms of his tackles and dribble past all of those little bits and pieces and pressures. But it's really interesting that he's dominant in the air, wins a lot of headers, wins a high percentage of his headers as well, is in the top 10% in the Bundesliga. But he also plays a lot of long balls. And again, I think this is something which you see with the Ben White stuff. And that's in there. That's last season. So he's shown the ability to do that last season. If we look at this season, he's been slightly less impressive. It's fair to say.
Pressured long balls is quite a lot, and that says something about Schalke. That's pressured long balls is a nice way of saying hoof it in a hurry.
It is, and it isn't in that Van Dijk plays a lot of pressured long balls as well. So it's what we do, but you can play them and you can play them well, and you get to see this season. He's dropped off in a few, he's fewer tackles and he's being dribbled past a little easier, but he's pressuring more, so he's getting more involved. But the key thing, I think, is for the second season in a row, other stuff's dropped off. How good he is in the air hasn't. So it's still a really high win percentage in terms of his headers, and it's still a really high number of aerial wins every single game.
For a modest-heighted defender as well.
Yeah, and I did a little comparison with him with Upamecano as well, and you get to see that Upamecano's firstly playing for a better side. He's the blue shape in this one, and he's obviously very, very busy. And the way that they play Leipzig's very intense. It's very sort of front foot football. So you can see all of that in there. What's interesting is though, this season, Upamecano's been playing more unpressurised long balls than Kabak. But even again, Kabak has shown this season to be better in the air than Upamecano. But Upamecano's been much more involved in matches and much more engaged on front foot. So that's, sort of within there. But for me, one of the things that Liverpool are investing in here with Kabak is the idea that he wins his headers. And if this is what we're going for, and we're having a little look at the lad, the idea of someone coming in who we feel will win their headers, I think is important for this Liverpool side at the moment, Rob.
Yeah, very much. I mean, on that tip, the interesting thing as the day is developing is there are still fairly solid contacts with others or other centre halves, even though Kabak seems to be the one that most of the credible journalists are saying Liverpool are in very advanced situation with. David Lynch, only 3 hours ago, say Liverpool are still pushing to sign Duja Kaleta-Kar from Marseille today. Fabrizio Romano said Liverpool have contacted Braga today about David Carmo, who's a serious option on the list, John. Now, I've had very little chance to scout David Carmo, other than to find out that he's over 6'5", 6'5", so 1.96 meters tall. I must admit, I like that. Do you think there's any? Let me just put something to you. That was a very crude analysis, I know. Let me just put something to you. We've been focused on, God, we've got to get a couple of centre halves in because Gomez and Van Dijk have gone, right? Gomez and Van Dijk are gone for the season, let's say more or less. There's a chance that Matip is too, because they're still going to have a scan on this ankle ligament situation of his. If we were to play out a season, you don't want to play out a season with just two good centre-half options. Is there a chance you could see Liverpool bringing in three lads, especially if they buy them in this loan type of way or cheap way that you don't have to keep them forever, trial sort of way as Neil saw it? Can you see a three? Or am I just getting insanely gutter greedy here? God knows I've been before.
I don't think you are being greedy in that. I think if it gets... I think they take two now, and I think that's probably what the aim is. But if they get so far down the line with three, and as you say, they are loads, and it's not huge amounts. I mean, I saw before in terms of Ben Davies is it's only 500,000, to actually hand it over, at this point, really. And I think they'll see him as an investment, and they'll see him as someone who they will eventually make money on, sort of whatever happens, really. And look, let's all hope he's got a great Liverpool career, because, if we're supporters, and, if you're ready for anything else, then you're just weird. But the money men and the people who are, getting this signed off by the money men will be thinking about other things, of course, or thinking about at least litigation and stuff. So I guess what I'm saying is, if it's Ben Davies and Kabak, there's very little outlay. There's very little in terms of risk. And in terms of Kabak's position, specifically, there's very little in terms of commitment. And so I think if a third did become an option, then suddenly you are able to say, well, it's almost kind of an X Factor style audition for who's going to be, involved with us next season. And that becomes really interesting.
Johnny, I have a breaking to cut across you there. Mustafi,
awesome.
We're not quite live, but some people might be behind the pace. So let's pretend we are. Breaking: Mustafi to Schalke is done. That should open the door for Kabak to join Liverpool. This is Manuel Veth in Germany, so I presume that is actually done. It gets ever closer, Neil.
It does, and I think it's I think that Liverpool have needed these pieces to slide into place a little bit. We'll post-mortem this properly tomorrow, Rob, on a gutter. But I think if they end up with getting 2 in, plus the feeling around Henderson and Fabinho, and the fact that they both acquitted themselves perfectly well, plus Phillips, then it puts us in a situation where we feel like there's at least a little bit of depth. I think it'll take some time. Like I'd be amazed if Henderson and Fabinho aren't the starting centre-back partnership for the game against Manchester City, let alone Brighton. Brighton comes very soon. But then from that point, I think it does free up options for the Reds in terms of doing it a little bit differently and being able to move those players back into midfield. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Fabinho. But it wouldn't surprise me if there was another one. The only thing I'd say is a lot of this stuff is done around Klopp likes harmony. He likes a certain size of squad, and he likes people feeling as though there is a place for them. So the one on the third, what would worry Klopp, I suspect, would be, if you've got all these lads on the pitch at the same time and it's like an X Factor audition, are they playing for Liverpool or are they playing to show that they're the best one for the audition? And it is, a lot of pressure on them. But all of that said, I think that, we're obviously in a much healthier position, both in terms of number of points, but also in terms of options from the look of it. If Davies and Kabak are both confirmed, than we were at half-time against Tottenham on Thursday night. And it's worth pointing that out. When Joel goes down, the club are hugely concerned. We now feel like we're going to be in better shape for what's to come next.
Okay, let's round up this edition of the award-winning Mini Gutter. John, you spoke to Chris Williams, didn't you, earlier about Kabak?
Yeah, I just talked to him about the situation in Germany. Chris was very hot on Kabak links for quite a while now, so he's been on this story for a long time, and we spoke to him a few months ago, and so it was only right. We thought that he got his moment in glory, if you like, and so I spoke to him. And so just for you audio people, you're going to get the insert of me having a chat with Chris now.
John and Chris Williams there for our audio listeners. Chris gets to be a bit modest, doesn't always have to do video. Not everybody does at the Anfield Wrap, but there is loads of fantastic video about Liverpool's busy day. I've done a stats thing around Ben Davies, that's available. And if you just want to check out what our offer is in general on the Anfield Wrap on this day of days, as it's all going on, we've got 3 gutters. We've got a review of the West Ham game. Obviously, there is also the free show that is available for people as well. But do come, subscribe if you haven't already, theanfieldwrap.com/subscribe. Or download the app. And on the app at the moment, if you haven't used it before, there's 1,000 free tokens where you can spend them where you see fit on whatever sort of show you want. But we're going to keep covering the life out of this transfer deadline day. We've got another gutter to come. There might even be one more after that if it goes all the way through to 11 o'clock. We're around for you all day on the Anfield Wrap. Everything you need for all your bits and pieces of Liverpool support in life. And listen, remember this as well. It's 2 days to Brighton and then it's 6 days to Manchester City. It does not get bigger than this.